Welcome to BrewFix, where coffee meets craftsmanship. And one of the strangest things about espresso and coffee tasting is that the very first sip you take is often the least accurate representation of the drink in front of you. Yet most people judge the entire cup based on that first impression, which creates a surprisingly common misunderstanding in the world of coffee. Because flavor perception is not only about what is in the cup, but also about how the human brain and senses interpret it. In the first few seconds of tasting, when espresso or coffee is first served, it is usually at its hottest temperature. And extreme heat has a powerful effect on how we perceive flavor, because high temperatures suppress certain taste receptors while amplifying others, which means bitterness and acidity can dominate while sweetness and complexity remain hidden until the drink cools slightly. And this is why many experienced tasters and professional baristas will often wait a few seconds before judging a coffee, allowing the temperature to drop just enough for the flavor compounds to become more perceptible. Another reason the first sip can be misleading is sensory adaptation, a phenomenon where your taste receptors and olfactory system need a moment to calibrate to what they are experiencing. Because when you first encounter a beverage, your brain is comparing it against expectations rather than analyzing its true flavor profile, and those expectations are influenced by aroma, appearance, crema, temperature, and even the context in which you are drinking the coffee, meaning your first sip is often more about psychological interpretation than accurate sensory evaluation. Aroma also plays a huge role in this process because espresso releases a burst of volatile aromatic compounds the moment it is brewed, and those aromas hit your senses before the liquid even reaches your tongue, priming your brain with expectations about sweetness, bitterness, chocolate notes, fruit, or acidity. And if the flavor doesn't perfectly match those expectations, the brain may initially interpret the coffee as unbalanced or harsh until subsequent sips allow the senses to recalibrate. The physical structure of espresso also changes rapidly in the first moments after extraction because crema begins to dissipate, oils redistribute, and dissolved gases slowly escape from the liquid, subtly altering texture and flavor perception as the coffee stabilizes, meaning the espresso you taste 5 or 10 seconds later is actually slightly different from the espresso you tasted immediately after it was served. Temperature gradients inside the cup can also affect perception because the top layer of espresso may be hotter and more aromatic, while deeper layers contain more dissolved solids and sweetness. And as the drink mixes and cools, the flavor profile becomes more integrated and balanced. This is why professional coffee tasters in cupping sessions rarely judge a coffee immediately, but instead taste multiple times as the temperature drops, observing how sweetness, acidity, bitterness, and body evolve as the beverage moves through different temperature ranges. And it is also why experienced baristas often say that great coffee reveals itself gradually rather than instantly. Understanding this simple principle can dramatically change how you evaluate espresso, because instead of deciding whether a coffee is good or bad based on the first sip, you start to observe how the flavor develops over time, noticing how sweetness emerges as the drink cools, how acidity becomes clearer, and how bitterness becomes less aggressive, turning the act of drinking coffee into a dynamic sensory experience rather than a single moment of judgment. Once you understand that the first sip is often misleading, you begin to approach coffee differently, giving it time to open up and reveal its full flavor spectrum, which not only improves your tasting ability, but also helps you appreciate the subtle chemistry and sensory science behind espresso extraction, something we explore regularly here at BrewFix to help coffee enthusiasts, baristas, and technicians better understand the machines, the brewing process, and the science that ultimately transforms ground coffee and hot water into a complex and evolving beverage worth savoring sip after sip.